protection of nature in West Africa for 16 years.
Nous avons également le plaisir de
We
recevoir
are honored also to have Dr. Elvis, coordinator of the Murai Vet Initiative, the Green World, strengthen the resilience of the population in terms of sustainable land management and also sustainable development. Before being part of African Union, you have been an expert about agriculture and AIDS in social areas. So you are now bearing the double cap. We will also have Mr. Deplast, who is the DG within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Europe since 2019. You French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, exact to be precise, you have a huge background regarding the collaboration, the international collaboration in Chad. You also work into the Ministry of Sea and other entities. We have also one expert in charge of environment management. So, Mr. Alexei, your background is of 15 years. You have coordinated dozens of projects in the area of combating the effect of climate change, agroforestry, and soil deterioration, among others. Thank you, honorable panelists, for your presence here, and all the participants who have made it early this morning to be part of this event today. So you will have the floor when you will be given the opportunity to intervene within the Q&A session. We are now going to display a video in advance.
Alors vraiment. On va peut-être juste remettre la vidéo, parce qu'on n'entend pas très bien. Les aléas du direct, hein, ça arrive.
En 2005, un comité intervillageois. Membre actif de ce comité a bénéficié de l'accompagnement du PMFM et de SOS Sahel.
450 hectares have been used. This is the dry season where we experience a large number of bushfire. We are in Tawadi, an area in south of Senegal. The implementation of the program. If we didn't have such a program, we would have failed. In 2005, an inter-village, a joint village program was implemented. Mr. Yem from Dawaki, active member of this committee, has taken profit from the support of the PMFM and SOS Sahel. Now, for 2 years now, we have turned to gardening, growing vegetables for a rich foods, and also increase our savings. Djibouti, one of the most vulnerable countries of Africa, vulnerable to the effect of climate change and the much more exposed to natural catastrophes, is as a short access to water, despite this disfavorable geographic in terms of agroforestry. So we have tried here to take advantage from the environment, use it to produce in farming. So the experience is on plots of land that are used for training on farming techniques. The outcomes are much more than expected. The women you saw here today are working in close relationship with the community of Rwanda. They are contributing namely to the strengthening of the quality of the foods at school canteen through the activities they are initiating, and also they are learning from the training they have been through to teach their children to be respectful to all the plants and trees. We have had training regarding gardening, meaning growing vegetables, and also we learned, among others, how to manage soil and plants. The community-based commitment is the grassroots of every activities, and it is from two major axes. The first is the building, the second is training, the capacity building of the women, and also we have gone from the vision that all the community needed to be involved for it to be profitable. Cameroon in Marwa, western country of Cameroon, today they shift for sustainable farming and is the key, and they have focused on agroforestry. It helps to make vibrant let's say biodiversity and others. And the other aspect is the economic aspect, because those farms will help the community to take profit from the production. And we also have the Nine tree. We'll sell oil that we make from the nuts from this Nine tree. We also have moringa tree here. We are using this. We can sell the fruits, and we can also sell the grains of that moringa tree and help out to make profits. We also have cashew trees and mango trees. On due time, we have profit from it. So what we wanted to show you, it is, nous avons plusieurs micros ouverts à la fois. We have several microphones open at the same time. So we have a short presentation ahead. Just to check something. Can English speakers hear us? If you do hear me properly, thumbs up, please. Thank you. So Marina will shed more light on this later. Next slide, please. to quickly come back on the initiatives that have been presented, two of them indeed. The first one was in Cameroon, the village of Chabawal, located in the area in the far west of Cameroon. In this village, the maximum of the profit of the youth is coming from farm. Shepherds, but they are doing it in quite difficult condition. It is in this framework that Association Solidaire for this region has taken action to improve the environment and the living conditions of the community. So this association started by conducting consultation with the community to assess the challenges and also try to address the solutions. So it is from the existing that they are basing themselves to address the issues. We have conducted sensitization and technical training on nursery management. We also sensitize families to commit themselves into replanting, and this as a result that we have a nursery of more than 1,000 trees, young trees, and have been planted. More than 600 trainees have been trained, among which we have more women, and then we have helped to settle the population regarding the replanting of trees that are resilient regarding the weather in the region. We have in Senegal, the Awadi region, in Tabakunda region, the women of the neighborhood called Nabakunda organized themselves into an economic group and they started growing vegetables. Unfortunately, they got discouraged because of lack of water and wandering animals. That was a real challenge, and they tried to find out solutions, taking profit from the trees. And also the local municipality triggered a project to implement new systems that were requiring the farmers to take water from remote places. This is where they started to design or set an area for vegetable growing, and they submitted to us and we approved it. So the idea was for women to produce vegetables from agroecology farming system. So it is almost the same approach that has been used. I'm not going to deep dive into details, but an area of hectares was given to the community. So what is interesting, the financing was a leverage to help the community to set a secured plot of land. And the importance to get community involved is that some families have given for free some parts of the plot of land. So some 3 tons of vegetables were produced at the end of the process. Normally you have an idea of those initiatives that have been supported. Now I'm going to turn to the experts, Marilo and Jean-Marc, precisely, who are well aware of the partnership. Let me ask them the following questions. What is the strength of that personal partnership between those organizations who apparently don't have something to do together? And secondly, what are the lessons learned and the way forward you can share with us? So you have a maximum 8 minutes, each of you, to come up with some lights on that. Thank you.
Merci Ange de nous passer la parole. Donc Jean-Marc m'a fait...
Jean-Marc made me the honor of letting me go first. Thank you so much, Jean-Marc. So the partnership between SOS Sahel and the Small Grants Program from the UNDP is an initiative which initially should not have been a marriage. But this partnership came about after a series of reflections on each side that showed that being actors in the area of the Sahel, we could join our forces, our resources and capacity in order to provide support to the communities at the bottom of the layer. So the strength of this partnership is, first of all, SOS Sahel, but also GF Small Grants Program, the microfinancing program of the UNDP. We work with the community, and we've been doing so for a while now, but each of the organizations have an experience to share, and the Small Grants Program has been working since 1992 with the community, and Africa is one of the continents or one of the regions where this action has always been undertaken. So we have the experience in giving grants directly to the organizations on the ground, meaning you have the resources going from the donor or from the grantor, which is the GF Small Grants Program, going directly to the organizations that work with the community and support the local communities on a daily basis, also working with the indigenous people in implementing the projects. So that is an important element as part of this partnership, where we actually wanted to give the local communities an opportunity to work directly as part of the fight against the degradation of the soil. And that was actually a core element that we had to factor into this partnership. The second element, which was one of the strengths of this partnership, is the fact that the small grant has experience in the call for proposals and the call for projects from the civil society organizations. So we know how to engage the civil society organizations. First of all, we have activities of capacity building for these organizations in order to help them draft proposals. And we use a participatory approach with the communities, because our approach is not just coming up with proposals and imposing them on the communities. We actually want the communities to draft their proposals, taking into account the concerns that they have or the environmental problems that they are facing. And they are coming up with solutions that can be based on endogenous knowledge and can be associated with practices or technologies that are coming from science. So there's this possibility in drafting the projects and proposals to put together both the empirical knowledge, traditional knowledge, with the knowledge from science. In addition to that, another element that appeared important as part of this partnership is the fact that GF Small Grants Program and SOS Sahel actually wanted to help the communities together, speaking of the local communities, but also they wanted to mobilize the local actors that are interested, because even beside the local communities, we have the local collectivities to which these communities belong. And we also have the decentralized administrations with ministries such as the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, the Ministry of Livestock. We also have the Ministry of the Environment, the Ministry of Forests. So the staff that is at the local level, the local administration in the departments, can also support these initiatives, these community-led initiatives that are leveraging this partnership. And we believe that these are three of the main factors that have made this partnership a strong one. Not to mention now the technical aspect to it, which is the expertise from SOS Sahel, working in the Sahel region of Africa and having been doing so for a while now. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Alors, Jean-Marc, peut-être que tu peux nous...
Jean-Marc, maybe you can enlighten us on the lessons learned and a few recommendations. All right, I believe Marie-Laure has set the scene properly. Now I will be reading this partnership a little bit. As she said, we are very different organizations. We have a world program that has been in existence for a while, giving small grants in roughly 100 countries. 108 countries to be specific. So it is the mechanism of the GF, which is the Global Environment Fund, for the distribution of small grants, and SOS Sahel, which is an organization working at the regional level in the Sahel countries. We have 8 countries in the Sahel, but its purpose is to work on the ground pursuant to NGO mechanisms with projects supported by financial partners, official public aid, and as part of this partnership, we have the opportunity to work with an organization that has the engineering, the mechanics of distribution of small grants in partnership with local institutions, national institutions. What Marie-Laure did not say is that it is an acknowledged organization in each country. There is a steering committee in each country. It's not the UNDP alone determining the projects. They involve the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Environment for call for tenders from the small partners, from the local organizations. And on the other hand, SOS Sahel, what we have been doing for 40 years and what we have developed over 4 decades is social and technical engineering, which highlights agroecology, because agroecology is a major solution. A former ambassador of France in the Sahel was saying that it was the Swiss Army knife of Sahel, because it is an approach that enables us both to tackle issues related to climate change, fighting against desertification, also food security, and so on. So this partnership, the peculiarity of such a partnership was the fact that it was flexible. Each of our organizations was able to bring what they could and what they had. It is a goodwill partnership in the sense that it was the least binding possible. It was entirely decentralized. What we requested from each of our respective teams in the 7 countries where we worked was to work together, working hand in hand. In some countries, SOS Sahel had financial capacity which enabled them to contribute financially. In other countries, we did not have projects that could match with the funds made available by the GEF, but the partnership was built on what each organization had. So it is a long-lasting partnership. We created duos, GEF and SOS Sahel, in 6 of the 7 countries. The 7th country is Cameroon, where we don't have a team yet. But in spite of that, there's there's constant communication with our team in Chad, which is a country really close to Cameroon. So this is a decentralized partnership. What was done in Ethiopia is different from what was done in Djibouti, because it is a meeting, it is a dialogue between partners that each have something to learn from the other. And what is interesting is that the partnership is not limited to a contract. Today, the partnership officially is over, but there's constant communication and a constant dialogue between our institutions, and it is ongoing between our coordinators in the countries and the end users, or the beneficiaries, if you will, the recipients of these small grants that are not seen as a mere drop of water in the ocean. The objective is not to distribute huge amounts. The actual objective is to initiate processes for empowerment, for reflection from the part of groupings that have ideas, and our mechanism will be supporting these ideas, both with technical support and also with financial support. This partnership, this local partnership, is ongoing, and it will continue after the contract with the local partners. After this partnership, will have mechanisms for dialogue with these partners, and they will continue to deepen this concept of agroecology, which is a relatively new concept, and it tends to contradict what a few technical departments say. The technical departments are also learning from the communities and acknowledge that they have the possibility to manage themselves and to adapt themselves to situations. We've seen people saying that, okay, we had money for a while, but our advisors did not provide proper advice. They said that we would find water by digging 30 meters, but we found the water after 45 meters. So we needed to find additional funding. But since we had already dug 30 meters, we were able to find other partners. So groups are able to find ways to make headway because we trust them. It is not a project that was drafted in Dakar, Ouagadougou, or even Paris. It is their own initiatives that we are supporting and that we are accompanying during the term of a contract, and that we continue to monitor after the contract, and we connect them with people that have the same type of experience. I don't know if I still have time. Okay, a minute. So I would say that what is truly interesting, and the recommendations that I would make to our financial partners, for example, in all of the projects that we establish, make sure you have a flexible fund which allows you to support initiatives that were not anticipated, that were not identified in the beginning. You might come across surprises when you start meeting with local partners. So we do not know how long it will take before we start the activities. We do not know what the problems will be. So the flexibility of the fund will allow us to adapt to the situation of the people that need this support. So the second thing is this dialogue. It is this partnership, not trapping the partnerships in constraints that are too strong and that will make us stop collaborating after the document has been signed. So it is a partnership through which we learn from another, and the least constraints we have, the more flexibility we will have to create new forms. We have more than 2 years of experience with the SGP, so we are examining the way forward. We haven't set a limit. We do not have binding constraints which would lead us to say that conditions have changed, we have to stop. We have a long-term vision, and we are setting up mechanisms for the long run. Thank you, Jean-Marc, for this feedback. I will now give the floor to Mr. Sampoudou, which knows the ground very well. So I have 2 questions to ask you. How is the contribution of local community essential in the fight against soil degradation? And as part of TRIED, how do you organize yourselves to engage the communities and build the capacity?
Thank you very much, Ange, for those 2 questions. Before before all, allow me to extend my gratitude to and the honor I am feeling here to be part of this panel to share and elaborate on some issue related to community capacity building for the combat against soil deterioration in the Sahel region in Africa. To answer your question, starting by the first one, allow me to quote say in my country, saying that he who sleeps in the house knows where the roof is sinking. End quote. It is to wrap up all regarding this issue, but what is the interest? What is definitely the contribution towards the communities for it to be essential in the combat against soil deterioration? It is because the communities are at the front line regarding what we have in terms of drawbacks and impacts of the deterioration of the soils, and also all that we can take as actions in terms of profits that those players will take from it to go out of those drawbacks, and they'll be the first to take profit from the combat against soil deterioration. And we need to say what is essentially that the key, those players are key in conducting initiatives on the ground to have noticeable results, because we cannot come up with results if we don't involve, if we definitely don't take the grassroots community to be the spearhead, because they are the one to put in practice, or we will decide out of those deliberations. The other aspect of it we need to strengthen is that the communities need to get involved. So let's say the majority of the African country, agriculture is the major part in terms of production, in terms of outcomes, in terms of needs satisfaction in within the communities, meaning that once we don't have fertile lands, it is obvious that that issue related to farming will not be addressed on an efficient way, and will have concrete actions for the profit of the community, given the fact that it is important, taking into account more than 95% of the entire population, if I take into account Burkina Faso, and let us make it essential in the fight against soil deterioration. The other aspect to take into account on this line is it's like we have the trend to forget that the community do embody the potential that is massive in terms of skills and indigenous skills for the fight against soil deterioration. It is key as well. If we don't integrate this level of the thing and take into account, we are definitely going to fail in terms of the decision we'll make here, in terms of implementation on the ground. As I have said it before, if this is not done, we will fail. And the other aspect we need to implement more and elaborate more is that deterioration of the soil. When we engage the communities, they will come up with good practices, and those good practices, the communities are definitely ready to make them appear on the ground. So what we have as a take from that contribution is that all the communities, for those soil deteriorations, not that horrible or terrible, they need to adapt. They have implemented some elements on the ground to mitigate or address the effects, even if we have things to correct. We also know that it is important when they are definitely involved. We have some takes that we will come up with relevant results on the ground. The relevant results we have on the ground, based on my small experience of 15 years working on a daily basis with the communities, the utmost results are made when we involve the communities. It is at that level that we can say that it is a key lesson that we need to take from the fact that their contribution is key in the fight against soil deterioration in arid region of Africa. Regarding your second question, what I can say is that as we are concerned, ONG 38, let's say 38 is Britain, a UK NGO whose headquarters is in Britain, in Africa. It is headquartering in Burkina Faso, covering 5 countries in West Africa: Mali, Niger, Ghana, Senegal, etc. In terms of actions taken for the community, the top mission of the NGO is to work strictly with the community to work in terms of reducing the pressures and all that we have in terms of soil deterioration, to focus more on the trees to make its potential come up, and also work hand in hand with the communities to protect environment. In terms of intervention with the communities, it is an approach to make do, to allow a sustainability in terms of our action taken. We want the community to be part of the mechanism, and even if we will not be part of it in the future, they will take it on their own. We need to maintain a permanent dialogue with the communities to set the stage of dialogue on the whole. And my final word will be that to complete the final action in terms of resources, we need to implement those projects that are key doors to open in terms to start and allow the communities to be parts of and even be at the front line for the fight against soil deterioration, because at the end of the day there will be profitable and embrace through some influences, through policies for the concerns to be addressed. Thank you very much, Alexei. Thank you for reminding that the communities do have skills and adjustment capacities. Now I'm going to address our colleague, Mr. Lacoste. What is the French approach regarding agroecology in the fight against soil deterioration, and also what is France's approach basically on the capacity building of their communities? Thank you, Ange. Thank you, SOS Sahel, for organizing this panel. You are asking me to know France's approach regarding agroecology. I believe that today we all agree on the fact that it is necessary better in the framework of growth of the population, and also climate crisis, health, sanitation crisis, and also on top of it the crisis in Ukraine, which is quite sensitive in areas where the soil potentials are deteriorating. This is to highlight the objective that are food sovereignties, job, and acceptable incomes, and also we have the forest, and also increased imports that are coming to undermine the trade balances, and we know the importance of the farm production. And the last point is to draw specific attention on towns and rural areas. Of course, donors are much more interested in the urban areas, but this is done for the worst of the rural areas in the central parts of the countries, and also for the population living in those areas. So the agroecology, I believe that today is not because of isolated persons' actions or It's not be considered as an ecologic desire or a will, a mean to produce more respecting environments with if good practices are applied, we come up with relevant and important outcomes, and also into improving the how to do and also the competencies. And there, I believe too that the program has been showcased to you today. That has been showcased to you today is an excellent one, and I would like to appreciate the UNDP and also the Global Environment UN Fund, and to support this initiative that is like an heavy burden for the donors. And as partners, we do encourage our partners at the French Agency for Development or the youngest brother, which is of the UNDP, the French Fund for Global Environment, to develop those kind of projects. If I can allow, it will allow me, I would like to mention my experience. I have started with a diplomatic mission in Africa, in Sahel region, and in the beginning of the project, and also on its way for its implementation, we come up with, we are faced with some frustrations. And when after 3 or 4 years, because of the lack of the integration of local populations, the infrastructures or other means are not done, and I can believe that the project fails. So for me, the initiatives are normally lay on the shoulders of those who are on front, the communities, the leaders, women associations. They are the sustainable one, and I myself as the manager, director of sustainable development. It's part of my responsibility, and we need to be cautious as donors and the stakeholders. We have our share. It's not because our role in agroecology has been successful in one area that it has to be replicated in another area the same way. But we need to take into account the context, to learn, to have the joint learning and also joint construction. It may be something new and much more political, but it is better to base ourselves on the local knowledges, take into account the farmers' experience, and look for those innovative aspects, because we have some practices that were used previously, but over time they have been forsaken, and but indeed they are efficient if you look at it thoroughly. We have micro dams in Sahel. I saw them operating, and they came up with excellent results. And the generations with the generation gaps, they don't use those methods, but they need support in terms of infrastructure. And here again, I would like to say that those micro projects are quite hard to manage by donors, and because the donors want to have projects of 6 million, 10 million to showcase that they have made it in terms of improvements and outcomes. But concerning the results, we believe that we can have quick funding. To reach my conclusion, I believe that the topic of the capacity building of the local population is key, so that it is key for the success of the project that I cherish too much, that is the Green Hole for Sahel. And it is an amazing initiative based in Africa, but it is one initiative that is struggling to be implemented on the ground, because the projects are not well known. They are sometimes imposed. We don't take enough time to do our job of follow-up and listening, and also construction that is done now by SOS Sahel. So this is where I'm going to rest my case, and I would like to commend you for giving me the opportunities to highlight those initiatives in line with our joint objective to fight against poverty, giving better living conditions to the women and the men in those Sahel region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lacoste. So, Dr. Elvis Paul Kandem, over to you now, because we've just started talking about the Great Green Wall. We talked about micro initiatives. So how do we make sure we can scale up? Because the purpose, the objective of the Great Green Wall is this regional scale, this regional approach. So how do we move from this smaller project to greater ambitions to attain the goals of the Great Green Wall? Thank you very much. Good morning, all. I am at home here because I am with my sister Marie-Laure and my colleague of over 10 years, Alexis. I'm here also with my friend Jean-Marc Ouedraogo. I've known him for more than 14 years. And there's also my former employer, the Director General of the company I used to work for. So I am at home, really. And I'm not part of your family? Well, you're my older sister. So I truly believe that it is a great opportunity. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. I believe that SOS Sahel is one of the is one of the greatest supporters of the Great Green Wall. We signed the first convention, the first partnership on the Great Green Wall with SOS Sahel, and that took place over 7 years ago. It was actually in 2013, to be specific. So it is truly important to state it, and I believe this partnership, I'm tremendously happy to see this partnership between Tree Aid and SOS Sahel, because that is the beginning of the question that you asked. How can we relate these micro projects? It starts with facilitators of these projects, because it is not a given at all. More often than not, this collaboration does not exist, and that's one of the biggest challenges that we have in the implementation of the Great Green Wall, having collaboration between the project facilitators and program facilitators at the national level, on the ground, at the program level. So this collaboration is really scarce, but I believe that more and more, as part of this Great Green Wall, we're seeing this collaboration grow. It's more than welcome. It's really timely, and I support this collaboration. So at a given level, I would like to start speaking English because it's easier for me. And I believe that will please Tom.
Much for inviting Africa Union to this important discussion this morning. We are overwhelmed by the whole idea of this UNCCT COP15, because the Great Green Wall is everywhere, everywhere. I was following the opening speeches, and the Great Green Wall was pronounced by all the 12 heads of state that made speeches. And that is something that we, Africa Union as the custodian of the Great Green Wall, it means it works. It is working, and that there are people, there are partners that are ready to do more. And let me use this opportunity to thank the French government through Mr. Lacoste, that have been a fervent supporter of the Great Green Wall and a strong partner to the Africa Union and the other Africa Union institutions like the regional economic communities. And we want to particularly register our thanks to the French government, to President Macron, for taking the Great Green Wall as as it's and his baby, to put it in a more subtle way. Yes, so you asked me, is it one question or two questions? One question.
One question. I asked you, how do we go from local micro project to a bigger ambition that is the Great Green Wall? How do you achieve that?
Exactly. I think we will first of all ask ourselves, why do we want to move from micro to macro level? That's the first question that we need to answer. At a time when the world is undergoing very, very serious financial crisis, at a time when the funds are no longer coming in as it used to come in those good old days, at a time when the world is occupied with so many other immediate challenges, I think scaling up of activities is the most efficient way to go. Scaling up and partnership is the most efficient way to go. And scaling up of activities, micro-level activities to macro level, is not a straightforward thing. It's not straightforward. Because, what do I mean? Before anybody can scale up an activity, the person or the group or the implementer must first of all have a mastery of the activity. If you don't have a mastery of what you are doing, you cannot say you're going to scale up. So it is very important that when we are developing projects at the micro level, scaling up should not be a secondary thought. It should be part and parcel of what we are doing. Which means if we are budgeting for projects, we have to budget for scaling up. And by so doing, we reduce the amount of time that we use for the extension of projects. We reduce the amount of funds that we allocate for extension of our project, and it makes serious economic and financial sense scaling up of project from micro to macro, and of course to the bigger level. And there are some key things that must be done, especially talking within the framework of the Great Green Wall that have been going on for the past decade and a half. The first thing, as I said, we must have it in mind when we start doing our projects. The second aspect is we have to budget for it. Very few projects really budget for scaling up experience sharing and knowledge management. That is a very serious gap. Another thing that we need to do is to look at the similarities of what we are going to scale up. Very often we just want to scale up without looking whether there's an interest in scaling up, where we are going to scale up, and how, and what are you scaling up? Because you are scaling up a project to an area where other projects are going on. How do we integrate our experience, let's say from extreme north of Cameroon to southern Chad? It's not automatic. It doesn't work automatically. And we also need to look at what is the priority of the other side that we want to scale up to. Does it fit with their priorities? Does the national strategy accept or is open enough to welcome experiences from another project? So there is a lot of questions that we need to answer. It's not automatic. We need to go deeper than just implementation of projects and programs and say we want to scale up. And another aspect that we need to look at is the role of the local policy organs, the local authorities from the micro level. Are these people implicated in, first of all, when we started these projects? Very often, projects are undertaken as if there are no governance structures in this region. And the only way for a project to be sustainable is when the project has a buy-in from the local administrative and sometimes traditional authorities. Did we put them in context? Do they know, or we invited them for the opening and for the closing of the projects? In the due course of a 5-year project, have we tried to look at the local economic development plan of a micro-level area to include it in their, to get some of the lessons from our project and bring in up? So scaling up of project is very important. And I think as we speak today within the framework of the Great Green Wall, the socio-economic and political environment is very favorable for scaling up of projects. And I think the development of the Great Green Wall was built with the notion of transboundary collaboration. That is why we have what we call the harmonized regional strategy for the implementation of the Great Green Wall, which means all our member states involved, they accept this strategy and they adopt this strategy, and they use this strategy to develop their national action plan and, of course, their local development implementation action plan. So the Great Green Wall has provided the enabling environment for scaling up of micro projects to macro level and, of course, to the continental level. And as you know, to round up, Ange, we moved the Great Green Wall from the Sahel and Sahara region, and now we are implementing it in the Southern Africa region. The 16 countries of the Southern Africa regions, the dry lands, have adopted the Great Green Wall, and now they have developed their regional strategy, and we are working with all those 16 countries to develop their national strategy. And we are building it from the experience of the Sahel region. So you see, scaling up is enshrined in the Great Green Wall. So to conclude, I would say it makes a lot of sense to include scaling up activities in our projects, and we need to budget for it. It's not organic. You must budget for it, and you must develop the necessary capacity, both at the level of the beneficiary of the projects and at the level of the partners. So thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup Elvis pour cette interview.
Thank you very much, Elvis, for your vibrant presentation. I would like to extend my appreciation to the panelists for the vibrant contribution to this deliberation session. Now open the Q&A session. Don't hesitate to raise your hands to ask for the floor if you want to ask question or supplement with contributions. Good morning. I am Nanema Parfait from the ministry in charge of farming in Burkina Faso. The first of my contributions is related to Djibouti's case. I would like to have more about the mechanism to access to the land assets, because as for us, we are faced with challenges regarding women's access to the lands. And somebody talked about contributions among projects on the field that is impacting the development of projects. This is commonplace as we are concerned, because each of us is doing it from his approach, the way he perceives it. We don't have a synergy at that level. In Burkina, for example, the project Beokojo is implemented by a group of 5 donors with the frontliner, that is SOS Sahel and the Great Green Wall. And this is an experience showcasing that if we do have synergy, we will make it to impact on a short run and also contribute to the restoration of rural lands. And also, we are talking about the capacity building. Let's mention the fact that on the field, the approaches from one player to another, we need to come up with a synergy of action if you want the grassroots community to efficiently contribute to the revert of the trends concerning the soil deterioration. This is what I want to say. Thank you very much. So you raised the issue related to land access in Djibouti. We'll take maybe 1 or 2 more questions before answering. Yes, madam, at the first row, you can go ahead. Second row, please. I would like to extend my gratitude to you. I am Mrs. Kuyate Kundu Sisoko. I am from I am the chairperson of a women's network for environment rights in Mali, based in Mali. I am part of the team of the Square Rezard network in Mali. Somebody in his contribution said something that was stunning from my perspective. It is Mr. Lacoste's contribution regarding the importance of women in the promotion of agroecology. And Tari has recently initiated national workshops about agroecology, and Mali has been one of the countries that had promoted this initiative at the COP15, and also is planning to do the same in Montpellier during the meeting coming ahead. And regarding this issue related to the involvement of women in agroecology promotion, can you from now have data, and you have been successful to put together data related to women's role in France, for example, and then we will take it as a lesson in terms of the scaling up for it to be a source of inspiration for us. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. We'll take one last question and allow the panelists to answer. Go ahead, sir. Thank you very much. I am Amadou Tambora. I am from the Farm Confederation in Burkina Faso. I am based in Burkina Faso. I thoroughly listened to the various panelists during the vibrant presentations, and you are addressing the issue that we are specialized in concerning the land deterioration, and also the issue related to the farmers, the shepherds and others. For the deterioration issue is a vital question for us, and that's in the sense that we are interested in the issues raised. We would like to know the various approaches and measures that you have towards our countries, specifically Burkina Faso, because for the majority of the measures, I know they are quite new, and we are working with the UNDP for the implementation of the program of sustainable living that is made of several components. The first one has to do with the sustainable management of houses and shepherds. We have another one, which is the valuing of the agrofarming, and the first, the management of natural resources. And this is where I would like to have more details, and I want you guys to be precise. I want to work with institutions to be successful in implementing the actions at our country level. Are you targeting all the participants? Yes, but specifically Mr. Lacoste. Yes, Mr. Lacoste, you have that question. The representative from CARI has also raised the issue about women's involvement in the agroecology management. And Jamari and Marilo, maybe you can come up with some answers concerning the first question. Mr. Lacoste, the floor is yours. If you are okay. Yeah, I'm okay, even if I am not a specialist in land issues in Djibouti. Land issue is part of the deliberation topic during the under discussions during this organization, and basically the access to land, mainly when we are targeting women that are sometimes faced with challenges regarding rights that are different from men, and sometimes with details related to having access to foundings. They don't have access to land. They don't come with guarantees to have financings. These are issues we French people and Europeans, we are trying to integrate it into the mechanism. I am also targeting the lady from Mali. We are trying to do the maximum that so that women, if I can base myself on my personal experience, they are producers. And those producers should normally in those Sahel regions to have enough access to enough means of production. And on this we are working it. In this landscape that is quite general, we have also the regulations and we have the practices. You mentioned the traditional authorities. From my perspective, I can say that we need to adapt the projects. We need to definitely take into account all those practices, because if you don't engage the landlords and you come with some crazy solutions, maybe you will make it for a few months, but after a year the project will fail. Where I don't know if I have heard you correctly, you need a synergy of methodologies. Based on my experience, I can say that, and also basing myself on the last intervention, I want to say that we need to track the innovations. We need to go ahead with good practices, look for and source the best practices from elsewhere and integrate them into the local initiatives. It can have profits, but it can happen that this can sometimes be linked to local context. If we don't do so, if you are not careful enough, we can be faced with failures. So we need to conduct trainings, give the opportunity to local authorities to take good care of those, to manage those trainings. And also what can appear that innovation lets them see and choose what can be the most in line with their reality. Talking about the access to land, you are at the right place, because this is the meeting that is to come with solutions about that. I have seen the result, the issue related to livestock, and sometimes they are faced with scarcity of natural resources. The pathways for transition and also the pathway for the livestock after harvest, and also we know that the waste, animal waste, can be used as fertilizers for farms. And we can still have the same attitudes, supplying with guidances and help with the governments with suggestions, and it will be up to each country to adjust the toolkits. So, and this is what I wanted to say regarding this issue. Jean-Marc, maybe to supplement with the issue related to lands. Yes, to crash on the issue related to lands, I'm not going to focus on Djibouti's case, but I can say that it is quite similar in various areas. And wherever we go, and we have rules and regulations, we also have local rules and local traditional systems. And in between of the two entities, we have a reality that is in one community or another. But from both sides, we have seen, basing myself on examples where SOS Sahel has been operational in Burkina, for example, it is key to base ourselves to sign local conventions so that everybody will realize that the future of the community is going through the use of some lands for vegetable farms, and also some irrigated farmings where we need water, we need technical services from government. It is from that where we have conventions, memorandum of understanding to integrate families to have access to for use for 10 years, for example. Another thing, if women don't even have access to land, we maybe turn around the challenge by granting the opportunity to some local entities to have access to the warrants, the land permits or certificates. In some countries, for some local communities, having access to giving land certificates, it helps women grouping to use. But legally, we have pathways to turn around these challenges we might be faced with. And after that, we must scale up and integrate local good practices for them to be replicated at the national level. To also answer Mr. Tamburai's answer, Mr. Tamburai's question, I really want to say the coming one. When we see into the Great Green Wall, it is the territory-based approach to integrate all the actors. Sometimes we are hearing things, the Great Green Wall will not be made without producers, without farmers, without shepherds. Not in the urban areas, but in the rural areas, on the basis of deliberation between stakeholders based on that area. It is a way, an approach for the implementation of decentralization. The Great Green Wall is a branch of experiences at different scales, going from the grassroots through dialogues and a better integration of initiatives. Because if all of us are not partaking, we will still have parts that are not happy with that.
Ajouter quelque chose? Allez-y, Alexis.
D'accord, merci. Je pense que je vais juste tenir.
Yes, I wanted to follow up on what Jean-Marc said on the double concern related both to the land issue and also to the gender issue. I believe these are two aspects in this problem related to the degradation of soil. We have to include those two aspects. From the small experience that I have, and the reflection that would be to go towards a decentralized action, we need to deepen that thought, because it showed also it limits in many countries. How do we achieve decentralization that makes the actors more responsible, helps them own the projects to provide solutions that actually meet their needs and challenges? So in my opinion, that's an element to bear in mind in order to provide solutions that are adapted to the areas. And one last point is the issue of harmonization. I think it was raised. There's an issue related to the carefulness that we need to have. We have to make sure we understand everything in its context, because if we are not able to fully comprehend the context, harmonizing is not a bad idea per se, but if we do not take into account the context, we might harmonize something that will not fit into the context we will intervene into. So in my opinion, we have to take into account these contextual elements to achieve concrete results on the ground. Marie-Laure, and then Elvis. All right, thank you very much, Ange. I wanted to talk about 2 points. I think at one point Jean-Marc alluded to to having resources in the projects that could be used for unplanned activities. Sometimes it's difficult for several donors to have resources for activities that they have not provided for. But in some of the community-led projects that were supported by the Small Grants Program in a number of countries, I think it was the case in Cameroon, it was also the case in Senegal, and most likely we will see it in Mali. In the community-led projects, we have a fund to support sustainable communities, and it is targeting women. So we will have maybe 2 million or 3 million CFA francs, and the women that are the direct end users, direct beneficiaries of the project, will start working as a group. They will officially establish their association or their interest group, their economic interest group. And when they are a legal entity, a legal person, they will start using these resources that we have allotted, and they will use that as a capital to start this support fund, and they will host that in a microfinancing institution or at a banking institution. So they will have a bank account, but before they open that bank account, the group or grouping or association has to be officially created. They have to have their articles of association, and they will open a bank account, and they will have a specifications document to explain how the funds can be granted through maybe loans with low interest rates to make sure these women can carry out activities that were not initially anticipated, but that can help them generate income. And that is experience that can be adapted to the context, contextualized depending on the countries where we are. So I believe this is an element that is worth sharing and also a good practice to have. Now, with regard to land, agroecology, similar to the use of agroforestry in some of the countries where this partnership was set up, is one of the elements that helps bring people together to talk, to have a conversation on how women can have access to land. There are communities where the woman is not allowed to plant a tree, because when you are planting a tree, in a way, it is a way for you to own this plot of land. So we have seen that when we share the use of agroforestry practices with the communities to have food crops that are annual or biannual, we tell the women to add trees to it that will contribute to the fertility of the soil. So this can lead to confusion because there's a blurred line, because in some communities women are not allowed to plant trees. So this has led to discussions where the village chief will have consultations with the men, with the elders, to see how we can authorize women to have land. Because sometimes they are widows, sometimes they are heads of the household. They are not married, but they are the heads of households. So these are elements that I believe to be important, and I thought they were worth sharing. Thank you, Marie-Laure. Elvis? Yes, Ange? Thank you.
Interest here is on the issues of land ownership, and the fact that there is the issues of the challenges surrounding land ownership is a big hindrance to restoration on the continent. And I have made experience of what is happening in West and Central Africa region and what is happening in the Southern Africa region. In the Southern Africa region, it is very rigid. It is clear. It is, I think about 70% of the land ownership is known. You have your certificate, this is your land, and you work on it. In my country, Cameroon, less than 10%, less than 5% of people have land ownership. And so by so doing, it is a big problem, because as we know, investment becomes very erratic. Nobody really concentrates, and people just want to clear everything. After all, they don't own the land. But there's a nuance to it. With deep reflection, I ask, what's the importance of owning a land? There's a difference between access and use of land and land ownership. I think we need to come to a level where we'll start looking at access and use. The problem is the ownership. The problem is not access and use. When people refuse women from planting trees, it's not because they don't want the women to plant the tree, it's because a tree signifies ownership. Yeah, tree is long-term, especially in the dry lands. It's long-term, so it signifies ownership of land, not use of land. Use of land is perennial agriculture, rain-fed agriculture, short-term. But if we develop laws and say, okay, like what is happening in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, they develop a system of land ownership versus land usership. That is stewardship of land. And I think stewardship of land is very, very important and more appropriate than thinking of ownership. Most of the problem comes from ownership. People don't want to separate themselves from their land, whether it's to give it to their children or to their wives or to their friends, because that is at the end of the day the only thing the family as a family owns. So I think we should promote more about stewardship, use, access, and make maybe like getting to say, okay, you can use this land for the next 20 years, but you can't own it. And if we take that approach, I think we are going to solve in a bigger extent the issues of land restoration, the issues of sustainable use and management of our natural resources. Because as far as I know that you are not going to take my land, if there are documents that say you are just working on this land, I am sure that my family lineage will continue on that land. I don't mind giving it to you for 50 years. As far as I know that there is legal document, legal and traditional method of protecting that land. So I think we need now to become more innovative when we have to support or promote sustainable land management and restoration. Thank you, Ange.
Thank you so much, Elvis. J'avais une question là-bas.
I had a question over there, madam. Go ahead. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Thank you, dear panelists. And my name is Sanu Minata. I'm from the Ministry in charge of Environment in Burkina Faso. And my question goes to Mr. Sonkweodo. I would like to know, did they ever have to face a problem at the local level to collect challenges that they will add to their project to carry out, and once they get to the national level, there's a contradiction. The national level feels it's already being addressed. Have they ever faced these types of challenges? If so, what are the measures that they have implemented in order to tackle this type of issue? Thank you very much. Mr. Lacoste will have to depart. Mr. Lacoste, thank you so much for your contribution. It was really interesting to hear from you. And we'll take another 2 minutes, another 2 questions, and then we will put an end to this discussion. We'll have Mr. Dispong and then the gentleman with the beige suit. Thank you so much. These are not questions from my part. These are rather contributions. since Mr. Lacoste is leaving, I wanted to say that he raised an instrumental issue regarding the collaboration between the actors in the countries. Of course, sometimes we don't know how that takes place, and we would like to strengthen that. Going back to the film that you aired, I would have liked for you to share a Sahel experience coming from Burkina, Mali, or Niger, but we understand the topic at hand. I would also like to insist on one point. Maybe Ange can say a few things about this with regard to the platform, the online platform that I think is a tool, and in my opinion, it is a tool to bring actors together. And I believe in terms of resource center, I think it will give more exposure and augment the leveraging of activities and field experience. And in that sense, I believe we will all come out on top without bearing in mind who came up with a platform, who proposed what. And I believe the Pan-African Agency is in the process of creating a similar platform, and that would be an opportunity for us to merging the two. So these are the elements that I wanted to share with you. These are just comments from my part. Thank you so much, the gentleman in the beige suit. Good morning. I will introduce myself. My name is Mokhtar Ba. I am the head of the Department of Continental Biodiversity, Forests and Green Spaces at the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development of Mauritania. I would like to thank our brilliant panelists for the consistency and coherence of their comments, especially when I look at what has been presented in terms of agroecology. The Great Green Wall, Mauritania is part of it. SOS Sahel plays a role in agroecology in Mauritania, and it's something that is instrumental. With regard to these things that we have talked about, expertise, practices, reforestation, and so on, dams, and so forth, Mauritania has experience in this field in the framework of decentralized management of natural resources. We've talked about this very often. We need to involve and engage with the communities at the local level to help them contribute to the implementation of the projects. That can be done through local conventions where there is a transfer of authority from the centralized authority to the decentralized authorities, and also giving responsibility to organized populations. That is already undergoing in 2 regions of Mauritania where it is managed at a decentralized level. Now, with regard to agroecology, indeed, as the lady said, speaking of Mali, there has been strong commitment from the Mauritanian government, and there has been partnership between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development, where they are promoting agroecology in the sense that you have to produce by protecting the environment. So it is strong commitment, and you as a donor, I am saying this to our doctor coordinator of the Great Green Wall at the African Union and also SOS Sahel, it is an opportunity for us to find funding for that purpose. The Great Green Wall, the issue is that we have the Great Green Wall. It is a public and administrative entity. So it is autonomous, and it is 15 kilometers going from the Atlantic Ocean to Djibouti. And for me, the department head, agroecology takes place within my department. Now, for the commitment going from design to implementation, I would like to know, either at the level of the African Union or at the level of SOS Sahel, to what extent can the Ministry of Environment have access to funding in order to truly implement these agroecology activities? And looking at the handsome quality and handsome experience of our panelists, apologies if I'm taking your time. Tomorrow we will have a side event on the promotion of best practices of agroecology in Mauritania. That is a way for us to contribute to the neutrality of soil and fighting against the degradation of soil. So I would like to invite you to that side event because the comments that you have made are worthy of being shared during that event. Thank you very much. Thank you. We will let the panelists take these questions, and then we will put an end to this session because we are already over time. Alexis, you can take the ladies' question, and then Elvis and Marie-Laure and Jean-Marc, if you also want to jump in.
Thank you, Ange. Thank you very much. Thank you to Mrs. Sanu for the question. You have raised a timely issue. It's not really related to the national level, but at a community basis, we between languages, there can be issues that are not shared by each other. You have shepherds who don't have the same need like farmers, and don't have the same need like the one who is taking profit from the forest. And what we are trying to do at the governance level, it is to allow the entire body of the actors with various perspectives to come together into a joint vision for resource management. And it is also the same with the governments at the national level. It's much more means and joint elements. We need to create a framework where and momentum and with a will of dialogue to come up with the final consensus to work with the population. Let me take one concrete example. You are now, for example, part of working in the environment. We have the environment codes with some regulations, but at the level of the community, the implementation is challenging sometimes. At the community level, we are integrating all the actors at the national or community level in a national framework to suggest some transition like local regulations in terms of forest management. They are not implemented, but they are coming to take into account the needs of the local communities. So it is in this view that we can maybe find some solutions, given the fact that all the stakeholders have their own needs and desires, but we need to come up with a synergy around this issue. Thank you. Thank you I would like to extend my comment to my colleague from Mauritania. The Great Green Wall, Mauritania is part of it from the beginning. But the Great Green Wall is not like a picture or like a moving. It's not during the discussion with the ministers in Dakar. The ministers deliberated on the initiative and the priorities of the various governments. It is not stuck into an environment. So if at the national level, on Mauritania's side, somebody is telling you about this line at the national level, let me tell you that this is not correct. And it was in the past, Mr. Amadou Ouattara was in charge of this subject. With him, we took the decision saying that the Great Green Wall is aligned with the national priority. It means that the implementation can be in all the areas at the national level. If this is the priority, part of the priority of the government, let it be geographical and policy priority. But we need to look at the the minister order signed, the government order signed by the ministers, but this is normally undermined by the former thoughts in people's minds who are still thinking about a stocks line. In terms of the founding, it is also in line with the necessity of the moment, the biodiversity. You know, the Great Green Wall is not stuck into replanting, agroforestry, or whatever you can put in. But when you are talking about resilience, we are talking about restoration, we are talking about a little of all those aspects. We cannot look at agro industry without integrating farming or livestock. But the Great Green Wall is taking out into account all the various aspects, taking into account the resilience and the sustainable resistance of the population in a given area. These are arguments that need to be integrated at the national level, because we have a trend of a group of ministers or ministries or experts to utilize the former methods to justify some actions taken. Thank you very much. I would like to say a few words. Thank you very much, Omer, for shedding more lights on on the platform. It is an activity that I have not mentioned, but it is embodied by the spirit we have, and it is to give the opportunity to all the local actors that are working into the implementation of the Great Green Wall. We trust, we believe in this project. We want to do all it takes to make it come true. Then we have opened that Great Green Wall to integrate all the players. Niger is signing an MOU with an African entity. This is your tool, indeed, for you to have a clear vision and also a set dialogue and share experiences at the level of the 11 countries part of the Great Green Wall mechanism. Thank you, Jean-Marc. Thank you to the participants for your relevant participation and contributions. Thank you to the panelists for your vibrant presentations and contributions. I would like to wrap up by saying that for the capacity building of the community is key for a variety of the players in taking into account the project and policies. Regardless the interest for the question and mobilization of funds, we need to speed up for this initiative to be successful in putting in place the Great Green Wall that we talked about here. It is a quite tricky issue. It is not just linked to the financial support, but we have also seen the perspective of the donors. But let's say, he said, Mr. Lako said it is quite challenging to fund the macro projects and integrate the 11 countries into the political and economic system. As a wrap-up, all the players have their expectations and the objective, but it is key to integrate a variety of players and double the competencies, work into a framework for scale up. Elvis has mentioned it, and also sensitize to the needs to reach the capacity building of local players, and also integrate partnership from national to international level, and also integrate the decentralized issue. Thank you to you all, and have a good day.